coming to the end, particularly for those of you who have not been here with us, several of you. I've been doing this series of messages of four-letter words that Christians and churches tend to avoid. And coming to the end of it, I'm sure that you were hoping that I would probably end on a high note and deal with the word, love or like at least, or something like that. Sorry to disappoint you. But there is one more word that I believe that we need to deal with. And we've been dealing with some, honestly, we've been dealing with some pretty heavy concepts over the course of the last several weeks. And today I'm going to mercifully close all of that out as we talk about the subject of being lost. Those of you who have been with me, I honestly, I pray that you have been challenged to deepen your walk with Christ. I really do. And my intention has never been to scare you, nor to try to manipulate you into doing something just for the sake of alleviating some fear or something like that. But my point has been to encourage you, to challenge you, to know that your life can be more than it is, particularly your spiritual life. It can be a lot more than it is today. And so these words that we've dealt with in the past, the word holy, the word obey, and the word hell, these are words that can have a huge impact on your life. And they can have a huge impact on how you choose to spend eternity. And so, just like the other words that we have covered, the word lost is a kind of word that can be offensive to some people. I understand that. And of course, it would be easier just to avoid the word altogether. Because we don't want to use the word lost, because we don't want to alienate people, and certainly I don't want to be politically incorrect. Yeah, right. Or if we talk about lost, and we're just labeling people, and we might come across as somehow we are superior because we have been found. Now, I know this. I know that the Bible teaches that some people are lost and some people are found. That's what the Bible teaches. And Jesus, our loving, gracious, gentle shepherd, had absolutely no difficulty at all. He had no hesitancy at all at talking about the concept of being lost. In telling people why Jesus came to earth, he simply said, you want to know the purpose that I came? You want to know the reason I am? These are Jesus' words. This, for the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. That which was lost. That was his purpose for leaving heaven. That's how much he loves us. He left heaven so that he could come and he could seek and save those who were lost. In the 10th chapter of Matthew, we would find that Jesus sent the apostles out, and he told them that they needed to find and they needed to warn those who were lost. In Matthew chapter 15, Jesus said that he was sent for the lost sheep. In Matthew chapter 18, Jesus said that he didn't want any little children to ever be lost. And Jesus is calling us this morning to get out of our Christian comfort zones and to be ambassadors for Jesus Christ. You see, with a humble heart, we are called to share the gravity of the situation for those who are outside of Jesus Christ. Now, the Bible has a lot to say about being lost and found, and I want to try to condense some of that this morning and share with you some stories about that whole thing. But before we do that, let's pray. Father, I simply ask this morning that you would help us to be about your business. Father, I come this morning and I confess that I have so many sins in my life. And I pray that in spite of my sins that you would forgive me and that you would use me. That you would use me this morning to be your spokesman to my friends. To encourage us that we can be different. To encourage us to know that our lives can be very, very, very different, very changed, and that you have put us on mission here. That people who are outside of you, Father, they're lost. And help us to understand that, and help us to see the world around us with your eyes. And to know that you have called us to be something different, something special to this world. I pray for my friends here this morning and pray that as we hear your words, that we wouldn't just look at them and walk away, but that we would be changed because we've been with you. I thank you most of all for Christ, who came to give himself to find us so that forever we can be found. And it's in Christ's name we pray. Okay, here we go. First thing that I want to share with you out of all the things that I'm going to share is that being lost will be devastating. The word that the Bible uses here to talk, most of the times that it talks about lost in the New Testament, it is a Greek word, and the Greek word is apollume. And this word has a few possible translations, and all of them are bad. I mean, for example, you can translate the word apollume, you can translate it as being lost, you can translate it as perishing or dying, or you can translate it as being destroyed. Those are the possibilities. You get to pick between those, and none of those are very, very fun. As a matter of fact, the Bible describes Satan in the book of Revelation. The Bible describes Satan using a form of that Greek word apollume. Because Satan wants to make you, or he wants to leave you, lost. And his whole goal is for people to perish and to be destroyed with him. That's the goal of Satan. But you know, when we think about lost, I think we soften it. I think we soften it a lot. It's just not that serious. I mean, we think about lost as maybe we're confused, or maybe we're just a little bit uninformed. You know, at the right smack dab, the middle of my ministry came this whole church growth movement thing. And the church growth movement leaders taught very, very clearly that you were not supposed to use the word lost to describe people outside of Christ. At best, you were supposed to describe them as unchurched. Okay, if you ever hear me use the word unchurched, please slap me. Sometimes some old bad habits die hard. But I want to be honest with you, I repent of those days that I bought into some of that stuff that really wasn't helpful for people. And we need to understand that we need to talk like the Bible talks. All in all, we tend to see lost as being pretty harmless. But the Bible sees it, it paints a very, very different picture. And I know that some people take offense at being called lost because it's rude and insensitive. And I know that it doesn't feel good to be called lost. I know that. I understand that. Every time I drive in downtown Denver, I understand how bad it feels to be called lost. I don't know what it is. It's a pretty simple place, but I am always lost when I get there. And it doesn't feel good. And I know that all you are running through the mail jokes about how we don't stop and ask for directions. But the fact of the matter is, when I am in Denver, I am never lost. I am just taking the scenic route. Please understand, the word lost must be in the vocabulary of the church today. Because we believe that being lost will be truly, truly devastating. And the problem is, if you finish your journey on earth, in the state of being lost, then that's an eternal consequence. That's some of the stuff that we talked about. Now, I don't mean to be insensitive. I really don't. I don't mean to be offensive. I honestly want to say it. I'm going to say it to you blunt. There is an individual that probably most of us are familiar with, probably not in church circles. It's Penn Jillette. And Penn and Teller have this magic act, so to speak, and quite honestly, it's pretty crude. And Penn Jillette recently wrote this book that talks about how, he is an avowed atheist. He makes no bones about it. And he says, you know what, I don't believe in God at all. And if I were to sit down with him and have a conversation, there are probably very few things that we would agree with. But I do agree with him when tell her in an interview, and I saw the interview. I was going to play the interview, but it was such a poor quality that I wanted to read this to you. This is exactly what he said. He said, "I've always said that I don't respect people who don't proselytize. I don't respect that at all. If you believe that there's a heaven and a hell, and people could be going to hell for not getting eternal life, and you think that it's not really worth telling them, this is because it would make it socially awkward. And atheists who think people shouldn't proselytize and who say, just leave me alone and keep your religion to yourself." And then he said this, "How much do you have to hate somebody not to proselytize? How much do you have to hate somebody to believe everlasting life is possible and not tell them about it? I mean, if I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that a truck was coming at you and you didn't believe that truck was bearing down on you, there's a certain point where I would tackle you. And you know what? This is more important than that." That's out of the hands, that's out of the mouth of an atheist. And that's what he has to say to us. You see, we have to choose to speak the truth in love. To speak the truth in love. If you have the most important news, you got to share it. You got to share it. You always share important news. And there is nothing more than eternity. Honestly, I mean, tell me something that's more important than eternity. And we need to share it. But there is good news in the middle of all of this. Because that, while being lost is devastating, being lost does not have to be permanent. It doesn't have to be permanent. I shared this verse a little bit last week, and we'll share it again, John 3:16. "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life." That word perish is the word apologia in the Greek language. That's the good news. See, Jesus came to solve the problem of our being lost. He solves it for us. He solves it for us, and it makes a difference. You know what the humbling truth is? I was lost. But now I'm found. And that's what keeps us, that's what keeps me from having a condescending spirit towards other people. We were lost. We were there. And I pray that I pray that you, I pray that we never forget that fact. And the truth is that there are people moving through life without knowing what it really means to have Jesus. But we can change that. We can change it. I told you about my lostness last week when I was talking about how I used to go shopping at this place in Denver, and how I got separated from my dad one time, and how terrifying that was. I ran across another story this week that I want to share. This couple was shopping together with their young son in a similar type of store. And they were doing their shopping and looking at all the stuff, and they were all together, but somewhere along the line the parents became more engrossed in looking at the stuff that they were buying, the stuff on the rack. And so they kept looking and looking at it. A few minutes later, they recognized the fact that their son went with them. And so they started looking for him, as every parent does. And they looked through all the racks around, and they looked all around the place, and they couldn't find him. And you know, within a couple of minutes, they got to the clerks, and they said, "You know what? Our son's lost. Would you help us find him?" So they had everybody involved in the process of looking for this child. And this process went on for a little while, and about 5-7 minutes into it, you start to have that shrinking feeling, and they had that sinking feeling that, you know what, maybe he was kidnapped, and maybe he was taken. And about the time that they're thinking that and the fear is setting in, they heard over the loudspeaker, "Would Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, would you come to the manager's office on the second level?" And so they went bounding up the steps, and And they found the manager's office, and they threw open the door, and there, sitting behind the desk with his feet propped up, was their young son sipping on a cold Coke. And here's where the story gets important. Because he had this biggest grin on his face until he saw the look on the face of his mom and dad. And when he saw the look of terror on his mom and dad, he burst into tears. Because that child did not know he was lost until he was found. Until he was found. And there are people that we rub shoulders with every day who are in that kind of spiritual condition. They are lost. You got to understand this. The number of people who claim the name of Jesus Christ in the United States is going the wrong direction. And it doesn't matter if you think that you see a proliferation of mega churches going up around you. The number of people who are going to church in Loveland, Colorado is going down. People are moving through life without Jesus Christ. People are lost without Jesus Christ. And I believe that it's only through person to person we can make a difference. Only as we talk to those people that God puts in our path that we can help them to understand that there is a foundness, and that foundness is in Jesus Christ. And only in Jesus Christ. Because without Jesus, people are plunging themselves into a Christ-less eternity. And that's where you come in. Because you and I can make an eternal difference. You and I can make an eternal difference. Third truth. The being found gives us a mission. It gives us a mission. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 20, the Apostle Paul says this: "We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God." That's our job. That's our mission in life. When we have been found, that we're not just saying, you know what, man, I'm glad that I made it. Let's go. Bring on the planet to crash into us. It's not where we're at. We're on a mission to talk to people about Jesus Christ. You ever notice how new Christians have such a vigor in their lives? I mean, they want to tell everybody. They want to get to all their buddies, and they want to tell them all about this new relationship with Jesus Christ. And they are so on fire, and that is such a wonderful thing. And it seems like many times older Christians are not that way. And I'm convinced that the reason is because we forgot what it means to be lost. And we don't know the meaning of that anymore. But we have to recapture it. Now this morning what I want to do is I want to tell you 3 stories. And there are 3 quick stories that illustrate this point. And they're all found in the 15th chapter of Luke's Gospel. If you've got your Bible or your app or whatever you've got with you this morning, I encourage you to open it to the 15th chapter of Luke's Gospel. And just kind of hold that open on your lap. Because I'm going to tell you those stories, and I want you maybe to take a look at those and make sure that I'm telling you the truth about the things that I have to say. Because I'm going to condense a lot of this. But I want to tell you, these 3 stories because they tell you how important lost people are to Jesus. Story number 1 is a story about a man who has 100 sheep. And somewhere along the line, he realizes that one of those sheep is missing. And so the story that Jesus tells, Jesus says, you know what that man's going to do? He's going to leave the 99, and he's going to go find that one sheep who is lost. And when he finds that one sheep who is lost and he brings it back home, he is going to have a party. He's going to tell everybody, and they are going to celebrate. Now, why this story is significant is because he's telling the story to a group of people who understand the agrarian culture, probably more so than we do. And he tells them the story about the sheep being lost. Now, we know a story about a sheep being lost by this young lady named Little Bo Peep. And we know that the key to that story is leave them alone and they will come home. Well, they don't. They don't. The first century Jewish person who knew about sheep knew that if that sheep was lost, because sheep are not very smart animals, they knew that if that sheep was lost, it was as good as dead. Because something was going to get it. And something was going to kill it. So they're going to look for it. And that's what that man does. Is he sees that sheep is missing, and he goes to find that lost sheep that is on destruction, on the path to destruction. And he finds it and has this celebration. Story number 2. It tells a story about a woman who has 10 silver coins. You know, and she's got some really nice silver coins, but probably all she's got. It's probably all she got. And Jesus tells a story and says that she had these coins, and one day when she was maybe, you know, kind of counting through her coins and look at them, she realized that one of those 10 coins was lost. And Jesus says, you know what she's going to do? She is going to clean that house within an inch of its life until she finds that coin. She's not going to stop the task because she is going to find that coin. And then when she finds that coin, she's going to call up the neighbors and she is going to put it on Facebook and they are going to celebrate. But she has her coin back. Third story he tells is about a lost son. You get the progression that's going on here? It's getting more and more important. And I don't mean to say that you're telling me that the sheep is more important than the son. Well, I hope so, but that's not the point. Do you see the progression that's taking place here? The first is 1 out of 100. The second is 1 out of 10. And now the third is 1 out of 2. And then, man, Jesus really drives the point home because it's a family man. It's a family man. And so he tells a story. A certain father had a couple of sons. His father had these 2 sons, and the younger son came to the father one day and said, I want to share the inheritance. Now, I don't know why, you know, it happens like this. That's probably part of the culture I don't understand, but Dad gives him his inheritance at that point in time. And so the son, he's got all this cash in his pockets, and he leaves home. And as Jesus tells the story, he says, this young man, he took the cash, he took the money, and he left his home, and he went to a faraway country, and he squandered away this money. He lost it doing things that weren't good things. Riotous living. I don't know, he probably hired some prostitutes. I don't know what it was all about, but he wasted the money. And now he's out of money, and he doesn't have any more friends because he bought all of his friends in the first place, evidently. And Jesus said, not only did he lose all his friends, and he doesn't have any money, but a famine hits the land now, and he doesn't have anything to eat. And so he figures, I'll make my way through. And he checks the one ads. And the only job that he can find is feeding slop to some hogs. No offense, Dave. But the fact of the matter is that's the worst possible job that a Jewish boy can have, feeding unclean animals to keep them alive. And he was barely making it. He was barely making it. and he was hungry. And Jesus says, he was so hungry that he was wanting to eat some of that garbage that he was feeding to those hogs. And then Luke chapter 15, verse 17 and 18. It says, when he came to his senses, I love that phrase. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. He came to his senses. Let me tell you this before we go this any further, is it is never a sensible thing to be away from your father. It is never a sensible thing. He says, I'm starving to death. So he says, here's my plan. I'll go back, I'll set out, and I'll go back to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven, and I've sinned against you. This kid now, he has nothing. He has nothing. He is separated from his father. He is hungry. He is ashamed. He is completely embarrassed. He is lost. But the Bible says he did something about it. He did something about it. Verse 20 says he got up and he went to his father. You see, there are a lot of people around us who are lost, who think about changing things. I'm thinking about repenting. I'm thinking about coming to Jesus. But they don't take any action. And so they stay the same. And so Jesus goes on this younger son. He decides to return home. And he starts on the journey home in desperation because he has no idea how he is going to be received. He doesn't know what his dad's going to do. He doesn't know if his dad's going to put up a fence and put up a new lock and say, sorry, man, you're out of here. He doesn't know if his dad's sitting on the porch and when he gets to the house, his dad's going to look him in the eye and says, I knew you'd run out of money and come home. He doesn't know how he's going to be received. Doesn't know if his dad's going to say, you don't have a place here anymore. He does not know how he is going to be received. And so he makes up this speech and he says, I'm going to go to my father and I'm going to say that I have sinned and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son, but please could you make me like one of your servants? Could I have a job? Could I do this? And I got to believe that all the way home from this far off land, he's practicing that speech. Maybe if I say it this way, maybe that will get to his heart. Maybe if I say it just a different way, and he's practicing that speech every way that he possibly can, but he wants to get the message to his dad. And he's coming home. And maybe his dad's sitting on the porch. Maybe he's scanning the horizon every day. We know that he was looking for that son every day of his life. We know that. And he's probably praying for his son to come home. One day he looks up on the horizon and he sees a figure out there. Probably thinks to himself, you know what? That looks like my son. But I don't think that's him, because the last time I saw him, when he walked out of here, he was standing so tall and his shoulders were back and he was so sure of himself. And that figure that I see out there, he is slumped over at his shoulders, his head is down. He's walking, that can't be my son. But as the son gets a little bit closer to home, the father looks and says, that's my son. And when that father realizes, that's his son, that's my boy. That's my boy. And the Bible says, Jesus' story was that the father got up and he took off running towards that son. he's running towards this. And I got to stop and I got to be honest with you. If I'm coming back, if I'd taken half of my dad's money and I'd gone out and I'd wasted it on something, and now I'm headed home. And as I start to, I can see my house and I can see the porch, and I see my dad running at me, I'm going to turn around and run the other direction as fast as I can. You know why this is significant? This is the only time in the Bible that God is ever in a hurry. It's the only time. God is in a hurry to restore that relationship to its right place. And so they meet somewhere in the field, and the son launches into the speech. Father, and I'll guarantee you, that father didn't hear a word of that speech, because he is too busy hugging and holding his son and pulling him close and holding him tight, because he doesn't want him ever to leave, because the father is relentlessly pursuing the lost. He longs to have the right relationship with his children. He longs for that so much. So Jesus goes on, and the father turns to his servants. Says, go get a robe. We're going to change this. And go get her a ring, because we need to put that on. So get him some sandals. And for crying out loud, bring some deodorant. Fire up the barbecue, because we're having steak tonight. His son and I, he was dead. And now he's alive. He was lost. And now he is found. And all the people who hear the story go wild. It's a story of redemption. But Jesus isn't done, because let me back up a ways. Do you know who was hearing this story? There were two groups of people. There were the sinners, the prostitutes and the tax collectors, who Jesus always came in, when he came in contact, he changes their lives. And they were there, and they were listening to that story, and there were also the religious leaders of the churches. And they figured they had it all together, and holiness and righteousness was dependent upon the things that they did. They used to put scriptures on boxes on their wrists or around their foreheads, saying, you know what, I've memorized these scriptures. And that was how they viewed righteousness. See, Jesus isn't done with the story. He's not done with the story. And he continues, because he wants to wisely teach and gently rebuke the attitude, the highly spiritual attitude of those religious leaders. And so he says the party starts. And the older son comes back. And he says, what's going on? I hear a bunch of noise coming from the house. And the servants tell him, hey, your little bro, he's back. And your dad is throwing a party. And the older son is not happy at all. He's ticked. He's ticked. So what about me? Let me stop right there and say, if you can't get excited when somebody changes their ways and comes to Jesus Christ, then you got some real issues that you need to deal with. If you think that there's more important stuff, something's wrong. So the problem is we tend to get more excited at some sporting event than when somebody is buried with Jesus in the baptistry. And whenever I'm like that, I'm the old brother. Sorry. And I pray that we never forget what it feels like to be found. When we realize what God has saved us from, then it should send us on a mission to take the good news of Jesus Christ, of salvation through Jesus, to those who are lost. You see, Jesus didn't come to earth to perform miracles, for crying out loud. He didn't come to earth to preach some good sermons so that everybody would say, man, he's got some wise words. He didn't come to earth even to serve the poor. He came in his words to seek and to save the lost. And put us on that same mission. Put us on that same mission to make a difference. And when someone who was lost is found, we better have a celebration. I told you earlier that the numbers in the church are going in the wrong direction. More than half of the people who live in this town don't claim an affiliation with Jesus Christ. It's time that we get out of our comfort zone and make a difference. See, that's why we're here. We're not here to grow a huge church, but we're here to see those who God puts in our path and to make a difference by reaching out to them with the good news of Jesus. And those are the last marching orders that we have from our Master. And Father, I pray this morning that you would help us to see. Help us to know that people who are outside of you, they are lost. They're not just a little confused, they are lost. And help us to stop making excuses. And help us to stop thinking, you know what, they're a good guy, they're a good girl, they're a good woman, they're a good man. And realize that none of that matters outside of Jesus Christ. And help us to be on mission to this world, to do your will. As you give us the strength, may we share the commitment to be who you want us to be, to do what you want us to do, to call those who are going to save. In the name of Jesus. And so it's up to you. What do you want to do with that? I know that there are some of you who, we've looked at these words. We've had some pretty challenging words, and we're at the end of this series of messages. What are you going to do with it? Some of you need to make some decisions. Because like I told you, to say, I'm going to do it later, that's the same as saying no. It's time to stop that. Time to say, I want to follow. I got good news for you. I got really good news for you. Last week, one of our own, Nathan Kelly, said, you know what? It's my time. And we're going to share in Nathan's baptism here in just a few minutes together, those of us who love him. We're going to share in that wonderful special occasion. And maybe there are others who need to make that same decision. Christ has called us. He's called us to crawl into people's lives, not just to crawl there, but to bring them out and to change Jesus. Let's stand and sing.